So Halloween is in 2 weeks. I have a Halloween party in 1 week, and I just decided I'm going to try to make my own animatronic to put in the yard, on top of a million other decorations and preparations I need to do. So, I don't know, should be a fun rush. Someone in my neighborhood posted that they were giving away this children's costume. That's the Unknown Phantom. So I'm going to use that as my guide. Make some kind of Grim Reaper, see what stuff I have lying around to do it. For the animatronic motion, I don't know, it's a Grim Reaper. I'm thinking maybe he would just sort of float. Maybe that's what I'll have him do. So I don't know, see what I can come up with. The first thing I did was buy a cheap windshield wiper motor from Amazon. I think it's a common staple among homemade animatronics to use windshield wiper motors. I had to expose all the wires, and then I just connected it up to a 12-volt power supply and started trying to figure out what wire did what, because that's another staple among these things, is that there is no standard. Usually with these windshield wiper motors, there are multiple speeds because, you know, when you turn your wipers on, you could do it on slow or fast or whatever. But in this case, I could only find one speed, which seemed like the high speed, and there was no wire that allowed the slow speed. I was hoping that for the motion I'm going for, the slow speed would kind of give me what I'm looking for, but since it wasn't there, I quickly just put in a PWM controller that I had from a previous project so that I could fine-tune the speed. Next, I wanted to kind of sketch out what I'm trying to build. I don't know what the standard way to come up with a mechanism for a specific type of motion is, but in my case, I'm pretty much just winging it, and maybe you can tell that by this almost nonsensical drawing that I did here. But the basic idea is that I would mount the Grim Reaper by his skull, and then that extends up by a freely moving piece that's connected to the motor, and it needs to go through something that can sort of pivot side to side. And what I was thinking is that kind of the higher that I put that piece that pivots, the less he would go side to side and the more he would go up and down. And the lower I put that piece that pivots, the more his motion would go side to side and less of it would be pushed up and down. I don't know if that makes any sense, and it barely made sense to me in my brain when I was coming up with this. So I just decided I had to start building stuff with PVC. I put together a simple PVC frame, and I tried to 3D print a little bracket arm going from the motor, but it ended up being too weak, so I replaced it later. I just attached the motor using one of these like duct tie down thingies, and I just attached this piece of wood directly with some sheet metal screws to the PVC, which worked out well. I also ended up 3D printing a lot of the PVC connectors. They start out at about 70 something cents and go up to multiple dollars each, but by 3D printing them, they cost pennies. To replace that 3D printed bracket, I ended up just cutting a piece of scrap aluminum that I had and then drilling holes in it. I decided to do a few different holes so that I could experiment with the length of the bracket and see how that affected the motion. I saw this tip from Steve Kosey for a great way to connect PVC to a skull or any other kind of head that you're doing. You put a hole in the head, and then you use a toggle anchor like that you would use to mount a shelf to the wall or something, and you run it through a PVC end cap, and then when you tighten the toggle in, it's going to hold really tightly to the inside of the skull. I added more to my frame, and I finally started getting the swinging motion that I'm looking for. I could have connected him directly to the motor, but then all I would be able to get is a pure circle motion. But I really wanted him to float and kind of more of an ellipse with more of a side-to-side swing. So the cross-shaped piece in the middle is made for a 3/4 inch PVC, but the pipe that I'm using is 1/2 inch. So it's both able to rotate freely on the side pieces and let the vertical pole piece slide up and down. At that point, I figured it was time to start putting the Grim Reaper together. I just used hot glue to attach the hood of the costume to the skull. And while I had the glue gun out, I also had to fix this little bluey guy. Can't remember what this wiener dog's name is, but the kids busted his ear off. I'm sure the hot glue will last a long time in their hands. Fortunately, I also had some spare skeleton arms in my Halloween stuff. I used some pipe insulation to kind of fill out his body and also to do the upper arms. I wanted to use pool noodles, but I couldn't find them anywhere this time of year. To attach the skeleton arms to the insulation, I just used zip ties, and I left them pretty loose, and that allows the arms to still move kind of naturally. It's like a really cheap way to get a hinge. And I just used more zip ties to get this weird shape, which is what I stuffed inside of the costume to make the torso filled out a little bit more. I'm definitely no good at using a needle and thread, so I just really roughly sewed the body of the costume to the insulation, and then I put a little bit of hot glue on there for good measure. And then I just used more zip tie joints to connect the insulation arms to the shoulders of the torso. I didn't video it, but to attach the head to the body, I ended up just putting a couple of holes in the bottom of the skull and using a couple more zip ties to pull it onto the insulation. Now he's starting to come together. I was finding stability to be a little bit of an issue since he's so heavy and he's far away from the motor with a wide range of motion. I ended up just bracing things with more and more zip ties, and that's probably why you spend a little bit of time up front to actually design your mechanism instead of just figuring it out as you build. I got him a real cheap scythe from Spirit Halloween, and then I spruced it up with some metallic silver spray paint and a little bit of red for blood. If you just barely press down the button on the spray paint, you can get this good splatter effect that looks like little blood droplets. I attached that with some more scrap aluminum just bent at an angle. I really liked the effect that it gives, having the scythe be stationary while the Grim Reaper is moving. It lets his arm move around freely because of those zip tie joints, and I think that just makes the whole thing look a lot creepier. I took some scrap plywood I had laying around and I cut out a base for him. I made it kind of oversized because he has so much range of motion, I didn't want him to tip over. And then it was time to just go out in the middle of the night and spray paint everything black. But unfortunately I ran out of black spray paint, so back at it in the morning. Like I mentioned, while I was working on this, I also had a whole bunch of other projects I needed to get done for our Halloween party. That included my first ever skeleton corpse using plastic wrap, a heat gun, and wood stain. And making like a blood splattered plastic sheeting kill room. And doing this like floating branch Etsy project thing my wife liked, which was actually pretty cool. And then I 3D printed a werewolf and stuck him in the ground and shined a spotlight on him so that even though he was tiny, it made a big spooky silhouette against the wall. And I carved this pumpkin that I thought looked pretty good, even though it rotted in like 3 days. Okay, back to the animatronic Grim Reaper. After adding some more stabilization and fine-tuning the speed, I think he's looking pretty good. And when you add the effect of the Halloween lights at night, I think he's gonna scare some kids. So yeah, that was pretty fun, even though it wasn't a whole lot of time to work on it. The only change that I wanted to make was to add my own custom controller, maybe use a microcontroller with a PIR to trigger his movement or something like that. But I ran out of time, party is here, and I gotta get it set up, and I don't think I'm gonna have much time to work on it between now and Halloween, so that might have to be something that I get done before next year. Overall, I'm happy with it. I think it's gonna scare kids. That plus all the other new decorations that I got done this year. The house is looking pretty good for trick-or-treaters.